the last one, so if you need a potty break, it's only 7 more minutes. The world has not yet recovered from a financial crash that wrecked economies, weakened currencies, and bankrupted entire countries. Power structures have been undermined, wars, rebellions, and revolutions have broken out all across the globe. The United States is deeply divided and has been for decades. Political discourse is venomous. Antagonism is encouraged and exploited by a shamelessly partisan media. The president is hated by a significant portion of the electorate, and Congress can't seem to pass the most basic legislation. Huge corporations are filling the vacuum, becoming more powerful every week. Immigration is changing the face of the nation. Many Americans feel threatened by Latinos and the Chinese. Fundamentalism is on the rise among those who find modern life chaotic and frightening. Unwilling to trust a government they believe to be both tyrannical and impotent, armed citizens are more and more willing to stand their ground and take the law into their own hands. Does this sound familiar? That, ladies and gentlemen, was America on October 26, 1881, when Doc Holliday and the Earp brothers faced off against the Clantons and the McLaurys in a vacant lot near the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. Have you all heard of the gunfight at the OK Corral? So you've heard the names Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and Ike Clanton, maybe, possibly the McLaury brothers. What is up with that? All of those guys were involved in a 30-second street fight 133 years ago, and yet their names are known around the world. The lies began before the gun smoke cleared. There was political spin and shameless ass covering. And almost immediately, the gunfight became central to American beliefs about frontier justice in the Old West. Opinions about the gunfight divided along political lines. The Earps were valiant lawmen defending their city from violent criminals. Doc Holliday was their loyal friend, a gentleman and a scholar. Or the Earps were badge-wearing murderers who killed innocent civilians because of a personal feud. Doc Holliday was worse than any of them, a quarrelsome drunk and a killer. There was a lucrative market for either version. Probably the best modern analogy is Fox News versus MSNBC, and their coverage of officer-involved shootings, which seem to be taking place at the rate of at least one a week these days. This novel has become tragically topical. For 133 years, the gunfight at the OK Corral has been a story about men, written by men, told to men, most of whom work indoors, and chafe at the modern world's restrictions, and sometimes think yearningly about just plain shooting some son of a bitch who really deserves it. I bring a whole different perspective to the subject, and not just because I have 2 X chromosomes. I'm a cop's daughter. I grew up with guns. Police work was dinner table conversation in our house. I am also a liberal Democrat who finds the militarization of American police forces disturbing and dangerous. So I bring some nuance to this story. I also do a ton of research for my novels, and this one drew on very recent biographies documenting the real lives of many of those who had a part in the Tombstone story. But as an anthropologist, I'm also interested in how myths develop. Why is John Henry Holliday portrayed as a violent drunk? How did an inoffensive alfalfa farmer like Tommy McLaury become a bad guy who deserved to die? How did Wyatt Earp become a hero after carrying out the brutal extrajudicial executions of at least 5 men? Those questions led me to the influence of Josephine Marcus Earp, who lived with Wyatt for nearly 50 years. Josie saw to it that Wyatt's life was scrubbed, sanded, smoothed, and polished, until it was shiny enough for people to name their sons after him. She wanted Wyatt to be remembered as a flawless lawman in the lawless West, and that meant other people had to take the blame for what happened in Tombstone. Simplified and distorted, the gunfight and the vendetta that followed it have been the subject of nearly 40 feature films, starting at the very dawn of the American movie industry. Those films have made the legendary Wyatt Earp familiar around the world. The gunfight itself has become an uncomplicated story of good guys and bad guys, of heroes and villains. The true story of what happened in Tombstone is, in fact, I believe, an American Iliad, a story of pig-headed stubbornness, of frightening rage, and of stunning violence. And in telling it, I have tried to honor Homer's Iliad. Homer tells both sides of the story, giving equal weight to the Greeks and the Trojans, providing an honest portrayal of their weaknesses and strengths, their mistakes, their regrets, and their sorrows. I wanted to unearth the Homeric tragedy buried beneath 130 years of mythology, misrepresentation, and sheer indifference to fact. I wanted to give voice to the real men and women whose lives were changed forever by those fatal 30 seconds in Tombstone. I wanted to do better for the dead and to lay some ghosts to rest, and that's why this novel is called Epitaph. It begins as Homer's Iliad does, "Sing, goddess of ruinous wrath." I'll just read the first 2 pages. To understand the gunfight in Tombstone, stop now and watch a clock for 30 seconds. Listen to it tick while you try to imagine 1/2 of a single minute so terrible it will pursue you all your life and far beyond the grave. Begin your half-minute with righteous confidence, though you stand 6 paces from armed and angry men. They have abused you. They have threatened your life. Your rage and fear are justified. They are in the wrong. You are within the law. About all this, have no doubts. 2 quiet clicks, a breathless instant, and the gunfire becomes deafening. When a sudden silence falls just 30 seconds later, the life you thought was yours will be over. Imagine your name is Earp or Holiday. Your name is Clanton or McLowry. Your name is Behan. Your name is Marcus or Sullivan, Houston or Haroni. You were in the middle of the gunfight. You watched it, stunned. You heard the fusillade and thought, "Dear God, not my man. Please, God, not mine." Whether you live another 5 minutes or another 50 years, those awful 30 seconds will become a private eclipse of the sun, darkening every moment that is left to you. You will be cursed with a kind of immortality. A century will pass, decades more, and still the living will haunt the dead as that half-minute becomes entertainment for hundreds of millions around the world. Long after you die, you will be judged by those who cannot imagine standing 6 paces from armed and angry men, not even for 30 seconds. Thank you.